This evening's reading is August 8th, and Swami Kriyanandaji writes, relax upward toward the spiritual eye in the forehead. Don't try to force your concentration to that point. Think of it rather as your natural center of being. And if we have practiced, any of the techniques that Yoganandaji teaches, including the very basic initial one of energization exercises, even yoga postures as he taught them, as he encouraged students to integrate. Basically, we do the yoga posture, let us say, then we close our eyes, we try to feel its effect. He would always encourage people to ultimately bring their focus to the point between the two eyebrows. Of course, the meditation techniques of Hong Saw, Om technique, many mudras, some which are traditional in practice, and a few which were suggested by Master uniquely, all of them again focus to bring the attention at this point. The breath he taught, the double breath, again he would say try to feel, and Kriyanandaji would explain further that it is a pranayam, that it brings the energy up. Pranayam also means a breath control. But what are we really trying to accomplish by breath control? We are trying to accomplish a control of our energies. So again and again, Master said that we should try to keep the focus or bring the focus to the point between the two eyebrows. Now, yoga, the very definition or purpose of yoga, Kriyanandaji said, he said first we want to calm the feelings of our heart. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodh. He said the likes and dislikes which keep us confused, engaged, moving up and down in our responses, reactions. He says those are chiefly awake, they are awakened or they cause turbulence in the heart, and he said the goal is to calm it. But once that energy is calmed, and today I will share through some of his very specific suggestions of how to overcome moods, laziness, temptation, pain, experience of pain in any part of the body, he repeatedly makes the point, calm the heart's feelings first, and then slowly bring that focus to the point between the two eyebrows. And Swamiji writes, he said, the goal of yoga is to bring the energy, the entire energy in the body, in the spine, up towards the brain. When that energy, you might say in a simple way, people wonder, when will divine awakening really happen? What will happen? Well, Swamiji again very simply, which was so characteristically his style, he would very lucidly explain these deep, often inexplicable by many people teachings. But because if we don't have an experience, it's very theoretical. But he would say that when all the energy in the spine, when it has been brought to the point between the two eyebrows, spiritual awakening is the fruit. That is what happens. Now, of course, grace is a component of that. That's why many times when he would bless, Yoganandaji would bless, and this is a common practice in other religions also, that they bless you at the spiritual eye many times. Why? Because ultimately I think the saints know, irrespective of culture and religion, that this is where we want to focus. They say in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that this is also where we want to leave the body from, the spiritual eye. It is, I'll clarify it in the beginning also, instead of repeatedly pointing at my forehead, that this is also known as the spiritual eye, the Agya chakra, the positive pole especially of the Agya chakra, the sixth chakra in the spine, the Kutastha Chaitanya, or as Master also added, the center of Christ consciousness, the center of super consciousness. And all of this is centered over here. Medically, doctors would say the prefrontal lobes of our brain are right behind that point in between the two eyebrows and behind the center part of the forehead. So, if the goal of yoga is to bring the energy at that point, then of course it makes it so important, paramount. And Kriyanandaji is suggesting over here, relax into that point. Don't try to force your concentration. I think that second line is also so important, because if that is the goal, the first impulse is, okay, I'm going to keep the focus. Just this morning, actually, somebody was saying I get a headache when I focus at this point between the two eyebrows in meditation. And I explained that, the gaze has to not really be kept here in the sense focusing at the point, because it can make us cross-eyed and immediately give a headache, unfortunately in time a squint. The goal is to keep the attention, or as Sri Yukteswarji, Paramhans Yogananda's guru, he would tell Yoganandaji and others who were in the ashram, try to keep your mind at this point in the center of the forehead always. And he told Yoganandaji, if you can do that, you will make very rapid spiritual progress. So what is it, friends, about this point? Let me first start by Kriyanandaji's explanation when he heard Yoganandaji also give the same counsel to other devotees. Keep the focus at the spiritual eye. Yoganandaji said, now that is what we want to do, but he said, if we only focus on keeping the attention over there, first of all, it can bring what Kriyanandaji is suggesting us not to bring, tension. It can bring a forceful attempt. In some techniques, we do want in the beginning, because in the beginning, almost no one has an experience of what it means to focus. Focus on what? You need some experience or awareness of something, whether it is a light, whether it is energy, whether it is a sensation, to say, oh yes, I can focus on this. So in the beginning, we don't have that awareness. So Master would say, you want to focus, but that can, he said, create a lot of willpower, which could have a tinge of ruthlessness. And he said the best way to counter it, and actually to augment a greater amount of flow also in the spine, and this is, you might say, on one level the highest point in the spine, and then going through the brain, he said, is to bring the heart's devotion. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, don't they say, I think in all cultures, when somebody is upset or emotional, do not make a decision at that point, or don't say anything. You calm yourself first, because, they have also found this medically now, that when we are in fear or anxiety or some sort of restlessness, our ability to think, we take deep thinking, creative solutions, they happen at the prefrontal lobe. And they say that we are, to the degree the limbic system, which is on the backside of the brain, is agitated with fear, anxiety and all that, the prefrontal lobe's activity reduces. There is an inverse proportion over there. You might also add that if the heart is disturbed, then we are not able to focus at that point. So we want to first be able to calm the heart. And there are ways to do it. Yoganandaji, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, he made many tools and techniques. So did Swamiji. So let's go through some ways. I would like to simplify it by saying there are direct ways to focus and bring our attention at that point. And then there are some indirect ways which also help, but we don't directly focus on the spiritual eye. So first of all, I want to start with one of the very beautiful definitions, most beautiful for me, definitions of meditation by Swami Kriyanandaji. He said, meditation can also be defined as ever deeper relaxation in God. Now, isn't that wonderful? In the autobiography of a yogi, Paramhans Yoganandaji writes more than a couple times that I found a quiet spot in my room in some temple, and he said I would sit with my spine straight, keep the focus at the point between the two eyebrows, and go into a deep state of meditation and then ecstasy. That to be able to focus here does not actually mean to have a lot of tension. Actually, as long as there is tension, we cannot really relax. And ever deeper relaxation is how Swamiji is saying that is one of the ways he defined meditation itself. So how do we focus there, friends? Something very simple is, first of all, in the beginning you can just, if you're a newcomer, or even if after, I saw an Acharya once who's been on the path many years. In her meditation, she just gently brought her hand and then went back, and without opening her eyes, that once in a while the eyeballs can go down, we can fall sleepy, the mind is wandering. So every now and then we can just touch and tap, you might say, on the spiritual eye and say, oh, this is where I have to focus. Second, of course, Swami Yoganandaji would teach this technique. Keep the hand straight, look at the thumb, and then gently, by about, you might say, 15 degrees, lift the thumb and still, without lifting your chin, gaze at that point. And keep the gaze there after you've closed your eyelids. So if you're, and you can bring the hand down then, but if you open your eyes are still gazing, you see, in that direction. This may seem like a very simple technique. Again, Yoganandaji's definition. I sat, I would lift my gaze, and I would go deep in meditation. That is a technique in itself, except that the mind wanders. For I think everybody, the mind starts wandering. When the mind wanders, the breath is disturbed, the emotions can get disturbed. But again, we want to, it's like if the mind wanders from this point, and if you're seeing a light at this point, we see the spiritual eye. Yogananda ji said it can be seen as a 5-pointed star which is surrounded by, a deep blue color, a tunnel, 3-dimensional color, and then finally a golden halo. And it's not so much seen here, it is seen in front of us, sometimes in a very big form. And again, I've heard from people that it's not just by our efforts. We have to put in our efforts, but once somebody told me that one simple prayer is all they required to immediately see the eye, and it felt like the right time, and they just prayed to Master, Sir, can I see the spiritual eye? And immediately, this came. So again, it has to be, the component of grace should be kept in mind. So if you see the light, friends, focus on that light. Another very simple technique, and again very universal in all traditions where meditation is practiced, is observing the breath. Now, yes, we can observe the breath at the chest level because it causes movements. At the abdominal level, where true breathing should happen, diaphragmatic breathing happens there. But then we want to focus at the nostrils, midpoint of the nose, and finally, friends, if we can, as the Bhagavad Gita states, focus on the nasikagram, the root of the nose, the beginning of the nose, which is the point between the two eyebrows where the nose fuses, meets with the forehead, and focusing on the air currents over there, focusing on energy flow over there, again raises our awareness. You can think of it as a gentle breeze or a fanning of air on the spiritual eye. Again, a very simple technique. But sometimes it requires just 2 minutes of practice to achieve a lot of interiorization, to achieve deep peace. They say, somehow they have calculated this. Neurologists and psychologists have been stating in the last few years that about 50 to 85,000 thoughts cross our mind. Most of them are subconscious. Nonetheless, they distract us. Actually, subconscious mind is situated on the backside of our brain symbolically. So it distracts us from being at the spiritual eye, and the breath and the mind have a direct relation. So to the degree, even for 2 to 3 minutes, if we can calm the breath, and that there are techniques of Hong Saw of following the energy in the spine. Again, as I said, that energy comes over here. Just for a few minutes also brings a deep sense of peace. And that peace, I think, partly comes because our mind in those 2 minutes is not distracted by, let's say, 50 thoughts or 100 subconscious directions, but it is focused relaxingly, intentionally. But this is intentional relaxation, you might say. Meditation requires some energy. Many times people say, oh, if it's requiring concentration, it must be requiring energy, and that's not meditation. How can anything that involves concentration bring about relaxation? But they are wrong. They're thinking of this kind of concentration. But if you love something, if your heart is in something, you're concentrating on it actually in such a way that not only are you not using energy, you're actually receiving energy. Think of a child. You may tell them in the morning, okay, today is the weekend, and this evening we will go for having strawberry ice cream at 6 p.m. You may forget it, but your child will remind you throughout the day, and certainly at 6 p.m. Remember, it's time, let's get ready, we have to go for ice cream. Why? Because their heart is in the ice cream. So they remember it. They are concentrating on it. Concentration is a heart thing also. Similarly, when we are meditating, we want to focus. So these are some of the, friends, direct techniques. Keeping the attention here, observing the breath. Visualization is a very beautiful technique. What is a visualization? Master said, think of a telescopic view. And he said the medulla oblongata, which is a hollow at the back of our head, it's the negative pole of the Agya chakra. If you take your hand and bring it down, you'll find a hollow. That's where the medulla oblongata is. And he said, if you think of I'm now showing you a side view, it goes up like this slightly because the prefrontal lobe is above. And he said, if you focus, imagine, visualize that you're seeing through one lens, which is at the medulla, and the other is of a telescope, is at the spiritual eye. He said, then your gazing becomes effortless. You're not confused where to focus, and the direction is also, as we had said in the beginning, remember? The direction is slightly upwards. And in the same vein, once you are comfortable with that positioning of the eyes, you can visualize. Visualization is a form of meditation where you can visualize a beautiful scenery. I often do this in some workshops with especially corporates that they have to deal with, they want to apply it in their office before a meeting, during a meeting. And I guide them in a visualization of a beautiful meadow with, feeling the sunshine, the wind, the smell of the flowers, and the, joy and the peace of that surrounding. And then I say, imagine in your mind's eye now that a window is opening into your conference room. And initially, it's not a, you might say, universally pleasant visualization, but you see, it's all in the mind and you are controlling it. Your will is using it. You are relaxed in that visualization, as Swami is telling us, be relaxed at that point. And then you say, going to carry that peace over there. Conduct your meeting with that relaxation. Conduct your communication. This was another indirect technique I was going to explain, but Yoganandaji said chanting, speaking, meditation. He said the voice should first reverberate in the chest, then bring it up through the throat and project it from the spiritual eye. And he says that's the broadcasting station. Everything becomes kind of, you might say, spiritualized to different degrees when we can do that. Kriyanandaji many times would say, he said, I hold my communication with others from heart to heart by calming it, or he said from the spiritual eye, that as if he was speaking to their higher self at the spiritual eye. He's also writing in that brief quote that is your natural point of being. Or you might say another visualization for this is think of your spine or your body as a thermometer, where naturally the mercury is rising to this point, or a bubble of water, how it would naturally, maybe through oil, in the beginning we're not focusing at the spiritual eye, but slowly with a few breaths your attention can come there and you can keep it there. Now, scientifically also, neurologists have found that to the degree we can work through the prefrontal lobe, keep our attention there, to that degree, remember the inverse proportion with the part of the brain which is responsible for anxiety or fear or restlessness, that part of the brain starts operating less. So it's like a muscle in your brain or a neuronal circuit that you are using, and the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And again, visualization can help us to accomplish that. Of course, any deep pranayam, observing the breath, triangular breathing, kriya pranayam, they work on the same phenomena, because energetically in the astral body, the energy is moving in the spine and coming to the brain, and we become aware of that energy. Once we are aware of it, we can focus on it. And that's a direct technique too. If you can see a light, if you can feel the energy over there, then try to, or sometimes a small electrical sensation, then you want to stay with that awareness. What are indirect ways? First of all, the posture. You may say, what has my spine got to do with the energy flow or my awareness at the spiritual eye? Again, you would remember Kriyanandaji, Yoganandaji would say that the spine is like a hose. And if you bend it, the energy which is trying to flow up, we are all trying to do that in meditation and yoga on the spiritual path, it is not able to flow. The obstruction, there's an obstruction there. And we are not able to feel it, appreciate it. That's why if somebody is so lazy in the beginning, master would ask in the beginning of his classes, how feels everyone? And people would say, awake and ready. And he would say, yes, now I can share my teachings. Otherwise, There is no experience. Even the thoughts are not so uplifted, and one may cynically say, oh, I don't know about this energy, but you can experience it. Yoga is not theory. Yoga is the how to accomplish whatever Shankhya and Vedanta promise. So we want to see how we can, in now coming to the indirect ways, keeping the spine straight, we can feel the energy that way, avoiding the loss of energy. Yogis with deep practice have said that some things can take the energy down, certain attitudes, lack of self-control in our life. And first we have to put some of those things in place, and then we can feel greater flows of energy. Now, I mentioned chanting. Another very simple form is japa, mental chanting. And you can do it generally, but you can also do it with the focus on the spiritual eye. And you can perhaps, let's say if you're being driven to work, in your car, you can quietly close your eyes and just say Om, Om, or peace, I am joy. And you can repeat those words mentally, or you can repeat an affirmation mentally at that point between the two eyebrows. And attitudes are very important also, friends. Now, you must have heard of the Kundalini energy. And yes, yoga practice techniques awaken it, but Yoganandaji said attitudes help a lot also. It is not awakened just by techniques alone. Attitudes of kindness, forgiveness, compassion, understanding. You know, I was reading a neurosurgical book. I'm also a doctor. And it was mentioned there that they have found maternal love is expressed at the point between the two eyebrows. Other qualities which doctors have found and attribute to the prefrontal lobes functioning are deep thinking, creativity, inspiration, willpower. They define it by the word resilience. They've conducted studies. Foresight, you know, when you're thinking deeply or being a visionary, let's say, you know, don't they always depict them like this? You know, they have this foresight, and we are using this part of the brain. Willpower, concentration, all these qualities are situated at the prefrontal lobe. Even when you're trying to recall somebody's name, you're trying to achieve deep concentration, you knit your eyebrows because you're trying to bring energy over there, and with the energy, thoughts come. You know, sometimes when we are sleepy, you know, you may just bend your forehead forwards because you just know that greater flow of energy happens over there. So these are some indirect ways, but ultimately they also help us. Some basic knowledge of our chakras or astral spine is also important. What are chakras? They are energy centers along the astral spine. Energy centers mean centers through which prana or life force flows, and they are, you might say, gateways. And at the base of the spine is the Kundalini energy. It's a reservoir of coiled energy, and this is mentioned in, of course, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and yoga, but also in the Christian tradition there are many references to that. So when we can become aware that there is such a reservoir of energy within me, my job is to raise it. We want to keep the spine straight. We want to be aware of what is the role of those energy centers, because they are not just centers of energy, they are centers of consciousness. This is the seat of superconsciousness I had mentioned. As we go backwards, it becomes the subconscious mind, and our, they say, memory and tendencies of past tendencies, they are situated in the spine at different levels. As we become aware, we can relax, we can release those centers, we can let go. We can actually sometimes just, one of our teachers was saying, you can sit and just feel that you're sitting without moving, and you're sitting like a rock. And you can see, friends, just by that attitude, the first chakra relaxes, and one can, with practice. Sometimes, I remember it took me many months, a couple years to start feeling. Sometimes you would feel the energy here, sometimes here, but slowly you do start feeling the energy everywhere. And once we feel it, then we can lay control on it without exertion, much exertion. And then finally it becomes almost, as Swamiji is saying, natural. We become more aware of the energy by greater focus on it. Greater the awareness, the greater is when we think about something, our energy, our focus goes there, our concentration goes there. So it becomes natural, and then we can control it because we want to keep the energy up. Now, Swamiji would go to a dentist many times, and he would not take a painkiller. How? Even for something like root canals, or once the doctor had to cut the nerve in his jaw, and he said, go ahead. And Swami said, I was composing music. How did he do it? He explains it. He said, first bring your focus at this point. If you cannot keep it here all the time, if you're aware of the body and the pain or the surroundings, he says, then focus on the energy moving in the spine. It moves up, it moves down, and it also, in response to emotions or fear, it moves more obviously. And he says, calm that first. Then when it is calm, slowly bring it up. Or focus on its calmness in the spine. That's called being centered in the spine. Same thing if you have a bad mood. And you know, when you're in a bad mood, don't think you'll reason your way out. Sometimes a lot of minutes, hours, or incarnations can go, because Master said we can make wrong decisions in a state of bad mood. So what we want to do is we want to bring the energy here. So tense and relaxing the body, and then just focusing our gaze at this point. And Kriyanandaji said once he was in a terrible mood, but he brought the focus at the spiritual eye. 5 minutes he focused there, and he was out of it. And when he was out of it, he could see his reasoning 5 minutes ago about people, the place, was wrong, because reason follows feeling. So we want to uplift our feeling that way. And we can also visualize the Guru at this point, think of their blessings coming to us. As I mentioned in the beginning, the Om technique, the Jyoti Mudra, they focus on this, and we can become aware through those techniques also of the spiritual eye. And I'll close with this one final story that Yoganandaji shared, when a heavy wishing well fell on his foot. And the disciples who were around, they said, Master immediately was in a lot of pain. And as they tried to relieve him by lifting it off his foot, crushed foot, he said, wait, this is a nice time to demonstrate how to raise your consciousness beyond the body level. And he said, I'm focusing here. And he raised his consciousness there. And they could see he was looking at them, explaining and making sure they are understanding. And he was free from pain. And he said, now I'm going to bring my consciousness down into the body. And his body would start trembling, and he was in a lot of pain. And Swamiji said that he was not there, but other monks were telling him, they said he did this many times. And it was a life-changing experience for them to see that this really happens and it can take us out. So as we said in the beginning, Sri Yukteswarji told Master, keep the focus here, operate from there, think from there, communicate with people from there. At sleep, when we're going into sleep, we may also offer, Swami used to say, create a bonfire. Offer your attachment. It doesn't happen slowly, quickly. It happens slowly. Every day we have to make an effort. There are some days when you feel very good. You feel, yes, I can feel the energy. Sometimes longer periods may come when we don't. But remember, it's like latent heat when you're melting ice. Sometimes it may feel like it's not doing much. But suddenly, then a few days, weeks later, we make progress. So let's keep that in mind, friends. If you had any questions about this, please write back. And we'll be very happy to explain that personally if need be. Have a nice week ahead. God bless you.